Welcome, everyone. I'm going to give just a minute or so for everybody to get in to the session, into today's session. See the numbers popping in. So, good afternoon. Hope everyone's day is going well. Marcus, you'll have to let me know if everybody's made it in yet.
We're at 70 right now. 71.
Okay, looks like the numbers may have stabilized. Let's see. Okay. All
Yep.
right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the DBE reevaluation process for GDOT. And our subtitle for today's webinar is Navigating the Portal, the Personal Narrative, and the Personal Net Worth Statement. And so, my name is Sharice Myrie. I'm Vice President of MH Miles Company, and we are one of the supportive services consultant for state-funded programs for Georgia DOT. And we are happy to bring this webinar to you to provide guidance on completing the reevaluation process with GDOT. And so, with that said, just a few housekeeping rules. Everyone is on mute. And so that's so that everyone will have an opportunity to be able to hear all the information clearly and at the same time. Um, Also, want to let you know that this session will be recorded and we will make that recording available to all those who are in attendance. But we do encourage you to ask any questions that you may have along the way, and we will try to answer them as they come up. And if we have time, we will see if there's any questions at the end. So right now, I want to make sure that the chat is in fact working. So if you would please, if you could just type your name and your company name in the chat so we can just kind of get a feel for A, if the chat is working, and just make sure that we know who's joining us today. Okay, great. Great, because I'm going to be asking just a couple questions that I would like to have your feedback on in the chat. And so I do see that it is working because I see all the names and the company names popping up. So thank you so much for that. So we'll go ahead and jump in and get started. Um, to go over our agenda for today's session. And like I said, this session is being brought to you to give an overview and guidance on GDOT's DBE reevaluation process. And this is being brought to you by GDOT Equal Employment Opportunity Office under the direction of Kimberly King. And so, with that said, the three main things that we're going to be doing today is walking through GDOT's reevaluation portal. So we want to equip you with the knowledge of what to expect on the other side of the portal. So we've heard some feedback, and I will get some feedback for all of you who are attending today, but just wanting to know what's in there. They haven't navigated through. It seems a little, you know, overwhelming. So we want to walk through that so we can kind of give you some pointers on how to navigate through that. We'll next provide some specific guidance on developing the personal narrative. And so, we know that this is also something that there are questions about. And I will say, as a DBE firm, MH Miles Company is also a DBE firm. We have gone through this process, so we definitely understand some of the questions that you may have. And then finally, as part of this reevaluation process, there is the requirement to submit your personal net worth statement. And so we are going to do an overview of that personal net worth statement as part of this session. But we also have another session this week that's going to take a deeper dive, line by line, in the personal net worth for completing the personal net worth statement. So today's session will just be an overview of that P&W, but the next session that we do this week, and you'll have information on that at the end if you haven't already registered for it, we'll take a deep dive, on that statement to make sure that you get it right the first time. So this is my slide, and this is actually one of Kimberly's slides that she wanted to make sure was in here to let you know that we need you. So what that means is, in order for this program to move forward to the next step, both GDOT and MARTA need to receive and evaluate all of the reevaluation applications for existing DBEs. So the process cannot move forward until you actually submit your reevaluation information. So with that said, we need you. We need you to go ahead and complete this process, start the process, ask the questions that you have as you're trying to complete the process. And so this is where I'm going to take a poll via chat, and I want to know from the firms, um, yes or no, if you have completed the process, and if not, why. So if you've started and not completed, if you haven't even attempted it yet, um, and what your why is. So if you could share some of those in the chat, that would really help us. Um, it'll inform Kimberly and her team what kind of support might be necessary or clarifications might be necessary that may be hindering you completing the process. So this is just extremely important. We cannot move forward with the next steps of preserving the DBE program without this first step being completed. So we need you. And so the first thing you want to know is where to go to. I know you've received emails from us um, letting you know the portal is open, how to navigate that. So we're just going to walk through that, and then we're going to just jump right in. And so, as we know, this is GDOT's website. It's www.dot.ga.gov. And once you navigate to the website, you'll have the home page. You want to select Doing Business with GDOT, then go over to Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. And then once you click Disadvantaged Enterprise, as your page is loading, it'll land on where the actual um, personal narrative portal or reevaluation portal is. You'll get this page right here. And so then what you do next is you just select the personal narrative form, and this is what'll pop up. One of the things I want to direct your attention to on this page is the help button in the top right corner. This is just guidance and instructions, as you can see on this blue page. We encourage you to download this so that you have it handy as you are crafting your reevaluation personal narrative, so that it can be a guide as you're walking through that process. So this is what you would print off to have handy. Once you've done that, it's important for you to know that you can save your application along the way. And so if you see down at the bottom, there's a button that says save. It's going to tell you to sign up and create an account. So you're going to click that orange button, and you're going to fill out this information so that you can create an account. So this means you can go back and log in and look at your application along the way. You can look at the application that was submitted and all of that. So just wanted to make you aware of some of the functionalities that will help you right out the gate so that you won't be, stuck here and then get to the next page and stop, right? So that is just the first part. Next, I wanted to give an overview of the sections of the actual reevaluation application. There are 5 sections. And the first one is applicant information, which we're going to walk through each section. And so the applicant information, which is collecting data from you about, your name, email address, those kinds of things. Section two is the section that deals with disadvantage in accessing capital or other financial resources. And one important takeaway about this section, includes the submission of the personal net worth statement. So in section two is broken up into um, two parts. It starts off with section two, and I believe it says section 2A. And so, with that said, section two is where you're going to provide information to GDOT directly related to your disadvantage in accessing capital or other financial resources. And this is where you will need to upload your personal net worth statement. Section three is where you would provide information concerning your disadvantage experienced in an academic environment. Section four is where you would document your disadvantage experience in business and or employment. And section five is where you certify and submit. Easy breezy, right? So if you got stuck on page one and got to page two and then felt overwhelmed and logged out, this is what's waiting for you. So this is exactly what it looks like. So want to give you just some best practices of an approach, um, to completing this. So the first thing I would suggest is for you to establish an account. So like we just walked through where you hit save at the bottom, go ahead and establish your account first because I don't think it may not be a one and done once you log in. You may want to save it and go back. You might have to, work on it again later. So establish the account first. So when you go into that first page, hit save at the bottom, go ahead and create your account. So that way you can log back in and complete where you left off. So you don't lose any data and you don't have to start from scratch when you decide to do it. Next, I would recommend that you select which areas of social and economic disadvantage experience that you want to report on. Keep in mind, you do not have to select more than one, right? So there's three areas. There's business, education, and employment. So you want to go ahead and select which area you want to report on. So the way that the form is laid out, the first one that you can select is the disadvantage in accessing capital or other financial resources. The second one would be your experience in the academic environment. And then the third area is kind of a combo. It's going to be either business or employment. And so decide if you want to do more than one. You only have to do one, but if you'd like to do more than one, already identify which one you want to work on and what you want to submit. So that's the second thing that we would suggest. The next thing is once you've identified which area of economic disadvantage you are going to submit for evaluation, you want to begin drafting your narrative and compiling any supporting documents that you have. So you want to take the time before you even start going through the portal to do these things, right? Start to draft the narrative and compile your support. And then you want to go ahead and complete your personal net worth statement, right? Go ahead and complete your personal net worth statement. And then once you have all this done, then log back into the portal and then go ahead and start dropping the information in. So this is just a best practices approach. It's not required that you do it this way. But this is just something that may make it easier. So, as I said, when you log in to the portal, you have that help button in the top right hand corner. Go ahead and print off that guidance document and have it available next to you, um, along with a copy of the presentation and you know which area you want to report on as far as your social economic disadvantage, and begin drafting your narratives, compiling your support, and then completing your personal net worth statement. So let's go ahead and talk about a couple other things that are going to be helpful for you to know right off the bat. So when you're selecting which area you're going to report on, this is some guidance that you can use depending on which one you want to report on. So if you select disadvantage in accessing capital or other financial resources, what you want to hone in on, these are some things that you can start thinking about that will help you craft your narrative surrounding this particular area. Any unequal access to credit or capital. Um, unequal access to being able to acquire credit or capital under commercially unfavorable circumstances, meaning if the interest rate is 50% and everybody else's interest rate is 3, right? So these are some things that you can start thinking about as a writing prompt. If your experience um, in accessing capital or other financial resources places you at a disadvantage. If you select, you know, to describe your disadvantaged experience in an academic environment, some things you want to consider for this could be limited access to quality schools or guidance or mentorship, a denial of equal access to any type of institution of higher learning, being excluded from any social or professional associations with students or teachers, denial of education honors that you rightfully earned, and any social patterns or pressures which discouraged you from pursuing a professional or business education. And some examples of those would be being unsheltered, limited English proficiency, low income, rural geography, um, groom and garb, religion, and national origin. So, um, these are things that are examples in that actual instruction or guidance document, the blue document that I showed you. This is there, so you'll be able to refer back to it. So we wanted to lay it out this way, just for the flow of how you're going to approach going submitting your information. And then the next area is it should be disadvantage experience in employment. And so what this would be any limited advancement opportunities or unequal treatment in hiring or promotions, any other aspects of professional advancement, pay, fringe benefits, terms and conditions of your employment, or any retaliatory or discriminatory behavior by an employer, social patterns or pressures which have channeled you into a non-professional or non-business field. And then you have the disadvantage in business, experienced in business. And this could be economic hardship. And similar to Section 2, unequal access to credit or capital or unfavorable terms. Also, unequal treatment and opportunities for government contracts or other works, unequal treatment by potential customers or business associates or partnerships, any exclusions from business or professional organizations, fewer opportunities to scale because of a lack of exposure, mentorship, or resources, difficulty in gaining credibility with lenders, suppliers, prime contractors, and encountering unrelated challenges. So these are just things that you can use as writing prompts that would help you further describe your individual experience. So, some tips for the form itself. Use the word count feature. So, we would recommend you draft your narrative in Word first. Use the word count feature because there are character limits, not word limits, but actual character limits when you're filling out certain boxes on the form. So there's character limits of 200 characters for certain things and 1,000 characters for others. So you want to be mindful that what you are entering into the required boxes do in fact reflect the amount of characters that are required, or that's limited within that limit, because you can't go over. So you're really gonna have to learn how to be really concise in your writing. So we would recommend go ahead and write it all out, get it all out of your system first in the Word document, then begin to reduce it down and make it more concise so it can fit into the corresponding boxes. You'll also notice that throughout the form, there are asterisks for required fields. Now, remember, I said earlier that you only have to choose one area of social and economic disadvantage to report on. And that is true. But there's going to be asterisks in all of them because if you choose to do them, they would be required. So, say you selected, um, you know, social and economic disadvantage in business. That means for the other ones, if you choose not to report anything, just put in A in those boxes, right? So that's you have to put something in there. So if you're not going to select that particular box, then go ahead and put in A. Now, you can't put in A throughout the entire form because there is a required response. So your required response would be in the particular area that you want to report on. Okay. So let's go ahead and move through the form so we can see what the form is asking, what you should be putting in there, and all that good stuff. So this is very basic information here. We're going to walk you through it just so you can see what's ahead of you. So you're going to enter in your name, your business name, email address, and phone number. Um, you're asked to enter in your citizenship status. So if you're a U.S. citizen, of course you would select that. If you're a lawfully admitted permanent resident, then you would select that, and that's kind of equivalent to a having a green card. So lawfully admitted permanent resident, if you have that designation, you would select that. Now, if you're claiming Native American, Native Hawaiian, or Native Alaskan status, what you would need to do is you would need to upload your tribal enrollment documentation, which would be your tribal enrollment card here, or any other legal recognition document from a state or federal agency. If that applies, depending on your status, you would upload it there. And then you would either save if you need to come back to it later or click next. So then this is section two. We've already finished section one. Now here's section two. Section two is asking you, this is what the form looks like, and it says that you are going to be describing your social and economic disadvantage in accessing capital or other financial resources. And note the disclaimer, if the below section does not apply to your firm, then place NA or not applicable in each of the respective fields below to continue. So if this is not what you're going to report on, then you would just hit NA and go to till you get to the one that you're going to report on. Well, you just hit NA for this part here. Now let's just go ahead and walk through it because when we walk through these when, where, who details, why, how, and uploading supporting documents, the process that we're going to go through for this one will apply to all the other ones as well. So, when. When is exact dates if you know them. They're preferred if you know what they are. But if you don't know them, you can put if you don't know the specific date, right? You can put the year. Try to document as close to the date as possible. So exact dates are preferred but are not necessary as long as the incident provides a specific time period. So if you don't know that it was March 1st, 1988, then you can say March 1988 or some kind of time period. Give some sort of a window of when it happened. This disadvantage can be from any period of your life. You do not have to be experiencing it currently in order to qualify. So from today backward, any period of your life that you want to report on, that's what goes in the when. Okay. Next, what you put in the where is where it occurred, right? It had to have occurred in American society. So you need to just pretty much say where this was that it occurred. Did it occur in Atlanta, Georgia? Did it occur in the Bronx, New York? Where did it occur, right? Did it occur in San Diego? Put where it occurred in American society. Who? You're going to explain who committed the action giving rise to your experience of disadvantage. It can be an individual, a group of individuals, an institution. Um, If you have individual names, that's preferred. However, if you're able to provide a specific figure or organization like president of or a position of a particular organization or something like that, as long as you can identify a person or individual, company, or institution, that's what goes in the who. And so that's what you would place there. You would explain who in that box there. Now, when it comes to the details is where you are explaining your specific individual experience, right? Your explain the conduct that caused your disadvantage. There's a specific instance of economic hardship or systemic barrier or denied opportunity that resulted in an impediment of some type. And we're going to jump into what some of these terms mean. But what you want to take away here in each section where it's asking you the when, where, who, and the details, you're going to follow this same kind of structure. So in the details, you're just going to explain basically what was the specific instance, what happened. You're going to explain what happened that resulted in this particular impediment to your progress in business. In this particular instance here in section 2 that hindered you in accessing capital or other financial resources. What was the specific instance and what was the result of that? Then the next section is why this demonstrates bias. So on the form, the guidance says to explain the reason that the conduct was more likely motivated by a systemic barrier or disadvantage than non-disadvantaged reasons without any additional facts. Just stating that it was a systemic barrier or disadvantage is not enough. So why this demonstrates bias is you saying why what happened in the box before demonstrates bias. I think a good place to kind of wrap your mind about here is comparing your outcome of the disadvantage or the instance to similar situated firms that are not disadvantaged is the why, right? So if your outcome for this particular example where it's saying disadvantage in accessing capital or other financial resources. We already read that in the guidance document, it could be something like unfavorable credit terms. For similarly situated firms that are not disadvantaged similar to yours with the same credentials and things like that, you experience disadvantage. The reason that it demonstrates bias is because they did not experience disadvantage, right? So the comparison of your outcome relative to similar situated firms that are not disadvantaged is what you can think about here in recording why this demonstrates bias. And then how and to what extent the disadvantage caused harm, including a full description of the type and magnitude. So you're going to explain how the disadvantage that you described under that detailed box, how did that cause harm, right? And how did that harm impact your entry into advancing in the business world? And things like offensive comments or conduct that's not something that would support a claim of social disadvantage. But you're looking for things that what was the result of the situation that happened to you. And we have an example that we'll walk through to add a little more, um, clarity and guidance for you, give you some writing prompts, things to think about as you're going through it. So, but you're going to take the same approach for whatever section you are going to describe your social and economic disadvantage. And then you'll see here where it says uploading supporting documents. So remember, we already said that they're not required, but they will provide further support for what you're saying. So if you have support, we're in this section with accessing capital or other financial resources. So if you have something that supports the details that you've described, the actual instance or specific experience that happened, like you know, unfavorable credit term, which we already said was one of the things in the guidance document. If you have that, then upload that, right? So that's an example of something that you could upload to further support the narrative that you're writing. Uploading a document is not required, and so you won't have an asterisk where you have to upload something, but it's not required. Another thing that you can do is if there's further explanation needed, you can go ahead and write that in a Word document. I would caution you against writing a dissertation, but if you need to provide a little more context than the space allows, then you can upload that in your supporting documents as well. Okay, so that's section two. Now, this is section 2A. So for section 2A, the first part says for you to list your income and financial interests here. Now, you can summarize your asset categories if you'd like here, or you can write to refer to the personal net worth statement, simply because the things that are being asked for in this particular section will be listed out in your personal net worth statement. So you can summarize, the categories if you'd like here, or you can refer the certifier to your personal net worth statement. To collect, the information about your assets and financial interests. Okay. And these are all required boxes. So on 2A, everything is required regardless of which area of economic disadvantage and social economic disadvantage you select. So 2A is required for everyone. Okay. Then the next thing is to describe the lifestyle and access to wealth that may affect perception of disadvantage. So if you have a lifestyle um, or access to wealth that may affect the certifier's perception of disadvantage, you can put that here. If you do not, then you do not, right? So you want to, just because you have access to resources does not mean that you are disadvantaged. But what the agency is asking for here is if you have a lifestyle that affects the perception of disadvantage, that you describe what that is, or if you have access to wealth that affects the perception of disadvantage, you would describe it here. The next part is where you would um, download the personal net worth statement and then upload the completed personal net worth statement. Once you've done that, you can save it and you can move on to the next section. You can also go back, as you can see here. And remember, if you follow the approach that we're recommending, you would have already created an account. So when you hit save, that means that you can go back at any time to revisit, make changes and adjustments before you submit. All right, section three is where you would be describing your disadvantage as experienced in an academic environment. So you would apply that same guidance that I just gave you about the when, where, who, the details, why this demonstrates bias, the magnitude and type of harm, and supporting documents. If you select an academic environment, you would do it the same way. And remember, in the opening slides and also in that blue guidance document, it gives you examples of things that you can think about as it relates to academic environment disadvantage. Section four is about, it captures two things: disadvantage experienced in business or disadvantaged experience in employment, or both. If you want to say both, you can say both. So what I want to do is just caution you, if you decide to complete this for both, you need to specify what information that you're entering in for what category, since this captures two areas. And so, what I will say is, for example, if you're talking about business, you can say, my win in business was January 2020, and my win in employment is 1999, right? So, if you're going to use both, but if you're only responding to one area, business or employment, then the details that you provide for this particular section should specify that this is related to business or this is related to employment. If it's related to both, then you need to be able to say, as it relates to business, and then include with your specific experience of disadvantage is. And if it's related to employment, you want to then say this is related to the employment social and economic disadvantage. And then you follow the same prompts all the way and upload your documents there. After you do that, that's it. You're at the end. So you type your business name in, you do the signature on your mouse pad, which is this is a really great signature because it's gonna be challenging for those of you who, have to sign with your mouse pad. And then you put the date. Then what we recommend is that you hit review so you can review what you entered in before you actually submit it. And so when you hit review, this is what it'll look like. It'll have, it'll assign numbers to all the things that you've entered in, and it'll just show your responses, right, for each section. And then once you are satisfied with it, you want to go ahead and hit submit. When you hit submit, this is the message that you will see. And so the message, you'll get an email and it'll say that you've submitted it. This email will say your submission has been received. It gives you a password to open the PDF. So it's going to give you an option to download the PDF. So it'll look like this. That's who it's going to come from. You'll see the download the PDF. And then you will need to use the password in your email to open the PDF. So this password is different than the password that you created for your account. So when you get your email to view the PDF of what they're sending back to you, your personal narrative form, you're going to have to put the password from the actual email. Okay. Now, let's kind of go over some personal narrative guidance. So we walked through what the form looks like, and we just want to add just a little bit more guidance for you as it relates to the personal narrative. So with that, we know that we're operating under a case by case standard. There's no presumption of disadvantage. You have an individual proof to demonstrate your or document your disadvantage in the form of a narrative, right? So, and it's going to be based on the preponderance of the evidence. And so, what that means is that it's more likely true than not true, right? So, preponderance is the standard of proof that requires the evidence supporting your claim of disadvantage is more likely true than not true. It's more likely that it happened after the agency reads your narrative and reviews your documents, that this did occur compared to it not occurring. So, what the regulation requires is that your personal narrative must establish the specific instance. And remember that specific instance goes under the details box, right? That instance impeded progress or success in some way. So, you want to make sure that you make that connection and that it resulted in some type of harm, right? And then that harm needs to be described along with the type of harm and the magnitude of harm. So when we're talking about it impeded progress or success, it means it hindered, it created a barrier, it obstructed you to be able to move forward in one of those areas in business, accessing capital, in academic arena, or in employment. When we're talking about the type and magnitude of harm, it's a tangible loss of some sort, right? So was it lost wages? Was it lost profit? Was it a lost opportunity? So the type and magnitude of harm speaks to that. All three elements must connect, right? Don't overthink it. If you know of a specific instance that happened, how did that instance then, in fact, result in a hindrance for you to progress in some way in one of those areas? And as a result of that instance, what was the tangible loss? So don't overthink it. Tell your story. This is an individual based, case by case narrative. So this is your structural framework, your specific instance, impeded progress, and harm. Your connection needs to be clear and logical. So when it comes to specific instances, those instances may include an economic hardship related to systemic barrier or denied opportunities. It must be based on individual experiences in American life, and it must not rely on, in whole or part, race or sex. This is extremely important because applications have come in, and this part is results in a curative measure in that individuals are relying on race and sex for the disadvantage. So nothing we talked about should be as a result of race or sex. Your specific instance. So when we're talking about impeding progress, right? That means it's some sort of a hindrance or an obstruction. So this specific instance that you just talked about hindered progress in what? Education? Did it hinder project progress in employment, or did it hinder progress in business? That's what you're saying. I've had this particular experience. As a result of this experience, my progress, growth, or success was hindered in business, for example, right? The example that we started off with, including access to financing. I received unfavorable terms. That's one of the things in the guidance document that speaks to business. The impediment has to be explained. So you want to make sure that that hindrance is explained fully in your narrative. And then you have to describe the harm. Remember, we said the type of harm, a tangible loss of some type, right? The type and magnitude of harm. And that simply means the size, the amount of something, right? So if the harm is a tangible loss of some sort of an opportunity or profit, you have to quantify the size of that. What was that? So you need to go ahead and describe the magnitude of that harm, and it should be directly resulting from the impediment. So you've got the instance that happened. As a result of the instance, it stopped, barred, it created a boundary, it hindered progress in this particular area. And because your progress was impeded, or halted or hindered, it resulted in this particular tangible loss. That's what you're putting there. And you need to also establish the owner's economic disadvantage relative to similarly situated non-disadvantaged individuals, meaning other individuals with the same credentials as you, or business officers, whatever, same credentials as you have, in the same situation, had a different outcome, not the non-disadvantaged individual compared to you, right? Establish your disadvantage relative to similarly situated non-disadvantaged individuals. So to recap, you're going to have your individual experience in the United States related to, in American society, related to the economic hardship, systemic barriers, or denied opportunities. That will not be based in whole and part on race or sex. That experience resulted in an obstruction or progress in education, employment, or business, and it directly resulted in an intangible loss. The connection has to be clear, and it has to be logical. And so let's think it through. Let's use the example of a pet impediment in business. So, just as a prompt to get you thinking about drafting this, think of an event, a decision that was made, or an experience that happened to you, um, or your business. Think of a specific instance that happened. And then when you think of that instance, how did that event or decision that was made related to business, accessing financing, impede your progress in business, right? So, how did it impede your progress? What was stopped or what could not occur because of this particular event, decision, or experience? That's the guidance. Some writing prompts that you can ask yourself: what was lost? What was delayed? What was limited? What was restricted? What was prevented as a result of this particular experience or instance? And then you apply that when you're describing the harm, right? In what way did this harm the business? We're using the example of social and economic disadvantage in business. So, in which way did it harm the business? What was lost? What was delayed? What was limited? What was prevented? And then, how did this compare to similarly situated non disadvantaged businesses? What was the magnitude of this harm? How long did it last? How much was it? What was that tangible loss? Make the direct connection. So I'm going to give an example of a narrative. I want you guys to read it, and I want you to think about it. And hopefully nobody submitted this particular narrative, but this is a narrative, and I want you to read it. So I'll read it aloud, which it says, I am a 100% woman-owned business that was denied an opportunity with a government agency. The awarded firm was male owned, and I think he wasn't qualified. And the only reason I lost is because I'm a woman. Because I'm a woman, it's hard to win jobs and results in loss of business and financing. So, based on this narrative, do we think this is acceptable or unacceptable? And why? So, you can put your answers in chat. Okay, I see a lot of unacceptables, all caps. Exactly. So let's look at why it's unacceptable though, right? Um, First of all, it's vague and not specific. What agency are we talking about, right? Doesn't have enough details. It's just does not say what the harm was. What is the actual harm? What was the magnitude of the harm? What was the opportunity itself? How much was it worth? What was the magnitude of it, right? It relies solely on sex. It lacks the structural connection, the specific instance, right? The actual impediment, what was lost, the harm, the type, and magnitude. And then what is the owner's disadvantage relative to um, similarly situated non disadvantaged firms? There's none of that in there, right? So that's why this is unacceptable. So you want to think like the reviewer that's going to receive your your application, your narrative, right? So it must include a specific instance. They're going to look to see if it includes that. It must explain the impediment in education, employment, and or business. So you only have to select one, but if you want to give it all to them, you can give it all to them, right? The harm must be quantified. So, what was the harm? The harm based on a systemic barrier, denied opportunity, individual experience. The owner's economic disadvantage must be established relative to similarly situated non-disadvantaged individuals. The impediment must not rely in whole in part on race, and it must not rely in whole or in part on sex. The connection must be clear. So you want to think through all of these things for the one instance, or multiple instances if you want to do that. And go ahead and walk through this process. Go ahead and brainstorm. It's going to take, a minute for you to flush it all out, but you want to go ahead and do that. And then you want to avoid some common structural weaknesses that are seen by the team, the review team, when they're receiving these narratives. There are very vague descriptions. Um, there's no clear connection between the specific instance and impediment. It doesn't have a magnitude at all. There's an over reliance on general statements. They rely on race. Some of these narratives rely on sex, and they don't make the connection between similarly situated non disadvantaged individuals. So people that have the same credentials that you have, similarly situated as you. Your outcome was A, but similarly situated firm's outcome is B, right? And your outcome renders you as a disadvantage. Okay. And so those are some things you want to avoid. So once you do that, you want to also check your supporting documentation. Although it's not explicitly required, it may strengthen your credibility of your narrative and it should align with the narrative. Don't upload stuff just to be uploading it, right? If it's something that can support your case, if you have a denial letter of some sort of an opportunity of access to capital or something like that, employment records, any type of written communications that you've received that would support a particular area that you have claimed social and economic disadvantage for, upload it in that corresponding section. And then before you submit, you want to make sure that you ask yourself these questions. Is it clear that specific instance, right? Is the impediment explained? Did I quantify the harm? Did I make the connection? Does the documentation align with what I'm writing in my narrative? Right? So the burden of proof is individualized. The structure and connection absolutely matter. And just I'm harping on this magnitude. Make sure you quantify the harm, right? So you all have these experiences already. Just tell your story. So this is just the narrative portion, right? So after you've done that, this is just, guidance on the narrative. Want to just give you some takeaways or some things you can focus on as it relates to the personal net worth statement, and then I'll check the chat and see if there's some questions that I can answer. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Marcus so he can go an overview of the personal net worth statement. Marcus?
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. I just want to thank everybody for participating in today's webinar. Like Sharice had mentioned before, we'll be going through a brief overview of the personal net worth statement summary page. And again, we will be having a more in-depth webinar on Thursday for the personal net worth statement. That's March 5th, and that's at 2 p.m. So if you are able to register for that, please do. Excuse me. Right. So, of course, the personal net worth statement is your assets minus your liabilities. It's in the most simplest terms, it means that what you own minus what you owe. It provides a screenshot of your overall financial health. You can go to the next page, please. All right. So, as you can see right there, the P&W, the formula is right there. It's P&W equals assets minus liabilities. So, and the page that's on the screen right now is the summary page. And so some of the common mistakes that we've seen that the applicants have made on their personal net worth statement, we'll go through that right now. First and foremost, at the top of the page, you want to make sure that you are putting the date that you are completing your personal net worth statement. You want to make sure that that's there and that's clear so the reviewer can see that. And then another common mistake that we see is the marital status. Um, it looks simple, but we do have people who've made a couple mistakes. So, if you're single, you want to make sure that you check the box to the left of the actual word single. And then if you are married slash have a domestic partnership, you want to make sure that you check the box to the left of the actual married. And then for married applicants, we assume that the amounts entered are joint marital assets unless you indicate otherwise. And another common mistake that we've seen is that clients leave the sections blank. If there's a section that doesn't apply to you, enter in a 0 or NA. That will let the reviewer know that the section wasn't overlooked or it wasn't intentionally left unanswered. So now we'll go over the assets, and that's to the left of the page. We'll start off with line item number three, which is value of your ownership interest in real estate, excluding primary residence. Again, primary residence does not need to be put on this line. It's only for additional properties such as rentals or investments should be listed in this section. So line item number four, which is personal property and other assets. We have a lot of people who leave that blank. Um, they're not looking for you to go get your stuff appraised, which or get anything estimated or anything of that sort. We're just looking for your best estimate of what your personal property is worth, and that would be TVs, vehicles, clothing, jewelry, furniture, things like that. Line item number five is ownership in other businesses. This is where you would enter the value of your ownership interest in any other business besides the business that you are applying to be reevaluated. Item number six is life insurance. Now, what people make the mistake is they enter the face value and the death benefit, but what you want to enter is in the cash sender value. The cash surrender value is what you access while you're alive. So you just want to make sure that you entered in the cash sender value, not the face value or the death benefit value. In line item number seven, the amount owed to you. Some people leave this blank. These are funds that are owed to you personally. Now, an example of that is if someone pays you or someone owes you a certain amount of money, like you let a relative or a friend borrow money, that'll be something that you put on that line right there. All right, so those are some of the line items that we've seen where clients have made mistakes on the asset side. Now we're going to go over to the liability side, which is on the right, and we're going to go over some of the mistakes, some of the line items that were made mistakes on in that section. Line item number 10, which is mortgages on real estate other than the primary residence. This is where you would list mortgages for any property other than the primary residence, such as, again, rentals or investments. In line item number 11, that's loans on life insurance. This corresponds with line item number six that I mentioned before, which is the cash surrender value. You would enter the loan amount that you withdrew from your life insurance policy's cash value. In line item number 12 is other liabilities. You would enter in the amount that you owe. So that would be any credit card debt, car loans, unpaid taxes, college loans, and any other personal debt that you have. You would enter in that number in there. And also, please note that the summary page on the personal net worth statement is the only page where if you put any information in that it would automatically calculate for you. The rest of the worksheets will not automatically calculate the information that you input, so you must manually calculate those and then enter that information on the summary page. And when everything is completed, you'll have your assets on the right, the left-hand side, and you'll have your liabilities on the right. And again, once you enter in all that information, the summary page will automatically calculate your personal net worth. And again, this was just a brief overview of the personal net worth statement summary page. We will be having a more in-depth webinar to go over the PNW on Thursday, March 5th at 2 p.m. So please, if you need more help with that, definitely join and log on. All right, thank you.
Okay. So, wanted to just also offer this to firms. So, we have GDOT has a business help center in Decatur. And we are accepting appointments to provide guidance. If you want to in-person guidance or you want to just call and set up a meeting to ask any other questions related to the information that we've shared today. You can call the Business Center. The number is on the screen, 678-420-5500, or you can email g.ssfp@mhm-cpa.com. And that email if you would like to make an appointment to come into the business center or schedule a virtual appointment. So, um, we want to be able to provide support. We can't tell you what to write. So I did see a couple questions and we can't tell you what to write, but we can absolutely provide guidance based off of the information that is available from the agency and from, like the frequently asked questions and things like that. Also wanted to, if you have any questions specific to GDOT's process or the personal narrative or status, I saw in the chat several people said that they were waiting for responses. This is the email. There's an email address at the end that I'm gonna share with you that you can actually email for any specific questions to GDOT. The personal net worth statement webinar is going to be on Thursday at 2 p.m. You do need to register for that as well. And so you can scan this QR code. If you're on this webinar, I'm sure you've already received the email about it, but it's going to be a step-by-step for all of the lines that you saw summarized on that one page. So I believe the document is 6 pages or 9 pages or whatever it is. That was just the summary.
Nine pages, including questions, including instructions.
Okay, so it's 9 pages. So we're going to go through that document so that I saw a couple of responses in the chat saying they're waiting for that particular webinar so that they can complete their personal net worth statement one and done and get it right the first time, right? This is the email that you would contact with any specific questions that you have related to the status of your application or any questions about the portal and things like that. DBE work at dot.ga.gov. And I did see a couple things in the chat that I wanted to just kind of respond to just because I want to make sure everybody's hearing the same message. So there was a couple of comments in there about interstate applications. So it is correct that you are to um, get registered in your home state first. And so GDOT is not accepting um, uh, applications for interstate firms at this time. So you would need to, this is all for firms that are currently have been certified by GDOT or MARTA. And this is in Georgia is your home state. So that's the first wave that I think interstate will come after that. There was a question about MARTA's portal. So I know we can get with
I dropped it in the chat, Sharice, the link to the
uh,
portal. It's
to
in the
Marta's
chat.
portal. Okay.
I did.
So if you joined, hopefully you all can go back to through the chat to see that, but maybe when we distribute the PowerPoint um to everyone that's in attendance, we can put the link to the portal there for
Yeah.
you.
And it's in the chat again. We just dropped it in. So it's there right now as well.
Okay. Okay, great. So there was several questions about the date period. So can you put, I guess random periods in there. So you want to try to put the specific date if it's known or as close to it as possible. So saying in the 90s is not as close as possible. So you need to try to narrow it down when it occurred. If it occurred in all from 1990 through 1999, if that's your span of time that you're trying to say, then I guess you would say that, right? But you want to go ahead and make sure that you try to specify the date if possible. There was another question that I saw that asked about what does that mean that the experience needed to be in American society? That means that whatever you're describing as your personal experience of disadvantage happened here in this country. That's what that means. Um, there were some other things that I saw related to the number of characters. I think they were answered, but just for everybody's benefit, there are characters limits in the form. So I think it's 200 in some sections and 1,000. As I mentioned, if you feel like you need to add more detail to further clarify or illustrate what you're trying to communicate, you can type it in a Word document and upload it. But the goal is to try to make your narrative as concise as possible. There was a question related to time frame. Is there a specific deadline? There is no specific deadline. However, until everybody has had an opportunity to submit and be reevaluated, the next step cannot happen. So give yourself an internal deadline. Like by this time next week, you're gonna submit it so we can move the ball forward, right? So there is no stated deadline, but the longer that it takes to move this process along and evaluate, you know, these applications, the longer it'll take to get to the next step to, move forward with the program. Um, there are some other specific questions related to individual cases of certification. I would encourage you to email those questions directly to DOT using the email address that is on the screen. Um, there was a question about the personal net worth threshold, which of course will go over on Thursday, but the limit is 2.047 million, excluding your ownership interest, I believe, in the business and your home and some other things. So that'll be explained then. So join us for that. We are going to make the presentation slides available, and just trying to see if there's anything else, Tony.
No, and Sharice, we've been answering most of these in the chat, so really responding to them in the chat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you've covered the major ones. Yeah.
Okay. And then again, if you I'll just go back to the help center. So slides. So if you guys you know want to call us directly or email us with any questions, you can absolutely, you know, join us. If somebody can put in the chat, I think the registration link for Thursday's session. Uh They'll be helpful so that they can, if you want to click that link to register. And please know that the Georgia UCP consists of GDOT and MARTA. So MARTA is following the same process, the same form. Um, they're doing it's a uniform process, right? And so MARTA is doing the same thing. And so if your firm was certified by MARTA, then you would be submitting your information directly to MARTA, and but the same guidance applies. Okay. Are there, I think that is everything. So it's a question, can we still use our current letter even though it is expired? Um, that you might need to email us if the agency accepts the letter. I don't know who you're using it for. Currently, there are no goals being added on projects until this process is done. So DBE goals are not added until this process is finished. So remember my "we need you" slide so that we can get back to the program. So please join us for Thursday. Um, if you need to learn more or I'm going to ask some questions specific to the personal network statement, you don't want that to hold up your application for errors on a personal network statement. So our goal is for you to be one and done, right? And hopefully this provided a little further insight regarding what's expected. So it won't be, now you see the whole process, what the portal looks like, what the form looks like, and you'll be able to prepare your documents and submit them accordingly. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for, excuse me, joining us today. Hopefully you were able to take something away from this session that will help you as you move forward to complete um, you know, your reevaluation application. We look forward to getting them into the system. I know for MARTA and GDOT alike, they're anxiously awaiting your submissions and would like to move the process forward for the state of Georgia in the DBE program. So enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you at our next webinar on Thursday. Have a great day, everyone.